There's far too many parents these days sending their kids to college. They have the grades to get in, they have the SAT scores to get in, but they don't have the executive functions to be successful once there. So they're taking out a lot of student loans, paying a lot of money just for the kid to be unsuccessful because it's sink or swim on day one.
Right. Hello, and welcome to the Admittedly podcast. My name is Thomas Caleel. I'm the former director of MBA admissions and financial aid for my alma mater, the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. In this podcast, I don't promise easy answers or quick fixes, but I will use my decades of experience to help you achieve your education goals. Now let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the Admittedly podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Caleel, and today we are talking about something that affects a significant number of students and families that I've encountered over the last 20 years of doing this: ADHD and executive function challenges, and what it actually looks like to support families and students in a way that builds real lasting independence. This is something that's meaningful to me, not just as an educator, founder of Admittedly, but also as a parent. I have two high schoolers, and I want nothing more than to raise them in a way that allows them and enables them to be successful and independent once they finally reach college. So today we are so happy and very honored to have Mike McLeod. He is a founder of GrowNOW ADHD and the creator of the Internal Skills Executive Function Strengthening Model. Mike has been in the trenches for over 2 decades, working with students and families facing ADHD. And in 2016, he built a model from the ground up that combines executive function coaching for students with personalized parent training. This is something that families have to work on together. It's not either or, and Mike's going to talk a lot more about that as we go. He has a master's degree from Lehman College. He's presented his work to audiences both nationally and internationally, and he collaborates regularly with doctors, neuropsychologists, and nonprofits. He's also an award-winning keynote speaker, no pressure, and a professional development trainer, co-host of the ADHD Parenting Podcast, and author of the Executive Function Playbook and the Executive Function Playbook in Action. I wanted to invite Mike on because so many of the students we work with in college counseling have ADHD or executive function challenges. This is not something that is rare or unique. It's also not something we want to hide from. It's something we want to lean into, understand, and give our children the best possible opportunity at success in school and beyond. That transition to college, away from the structure and support of home, is a lot of times where things can fall apart, and we want to get ahead of that. So Mike has spent 2 decades helping students build the internal skills they need to actually function independently. And I think this conversation is going to hit home for a lot of families who might be wrestling with this and trying to figure out, how do we approach this admissions process? How do we set our child up for success? So with that, Mike, welcome. It's so wonderful to have you here. Thank you.
Yeah, I am so excited. Thomas, I love the work that you're doing with the Admittedly podcast and sharing this information with parents, because this is really helping parents think beyond just getting through the day. There's never been a harder time to be a parent. Parents are burnt out. They're exhausted. Their entire algorithm is all these parenting experts yelling at them every single day.
With very conflicting advice, right?
Very conflicting
do
advice.
Do A, don't do A.
Yes. Not only is it conflicting, a lot of it is not based in science. It's something called feel-good pseudoscience to get likes and shares and retweets. And when you play it and when you validate parents' emotions and struggles and give them information that kind of speaks to their heart, it's very easy to get likes and shares. But I think we all have to remember the best advice you ever get in your life is not very easy. It's not very hard to hear. So I think a lot of parenting influencers out there, I'll use the term influencer, not expert,
yes,
have kind of gotten in the sort of the mindset of, let me make things as easy as possible for parents and validate their fears and their emotions and things like that. And here we are in the worst youth mental health crisis of all time, and massive unemployment among Gen Z and this young population, and failure to launch becoming a very big term. Yes. America being, top in the world in first semester college dropouts. This generation of youth is hurting. And a lot of that is because of the world we've given them, and we're not helping them develop these executive functioning skills, which are the greatest predictor of success for human beings.
Well, you've come to the right place, because if you read the comments on my Instagram and TikTok, you'll realize that I am personally responsible for this entire epidemic. But we are focused here on giving real advice, practical advice. And like you said, it's often hard and unpleasant, but we'd much rather tell the truth. And because I believe that students and families rise to a challenge rather than shy from a challenge. So we're really glad to have you here. One thing I wanted to start with a question, just because not everybody is as well versed as you are. What is the difference when we think about like ADHD and executive function? Are those two different things? Are they interrelated? How does that look?
So that's a great first step question. So number one overall, part of the reason that got me so involved in this and everything as an individual with ADHD myself and so passionate about helping kids, part of what helped me develop the internal skills model is just how unbelievably misunderstood both ADHD and executive functions truly are. We have to understand, and I highly recommend anyone interested in this, look up the names like Dr. Russell Barkley, the worldwide leader on ADHD and executive functioning, the great Sarah Ward and Kristen Jacobson, Dr. George McCloskey, just incredible people that have influenced me in my career. And really, ADHD, we have to understand, ADHD is not an attention disorder. ADHD is not about hyperactive kids who can't sit still or inattentive kids who daydream and look out the window. And executive functioning, you mentioned that to most people, they think it's time management, organization, messy backpacks, messy folders, messy bedrooms, and that is the smallest possible fraction of what executive functioning truly is. Executive functioning is the greatest predictor of success for human beings. So ADHD is not an attention disorder, it is a disorder of executive functioning. It is not ADHD, it's
Right.
EFDD, executive functioning developmental disorder. And executive functioning is not time management and organization. It is the ability to be self-aware and understand that the things you do affect yourself and affect others, self-regulation of emotions,
Right.
language, body, behavior, the ability to motivate yourself towards non-preferred, non-screen-based, non-instantly stimulating tasks, and the ability to self-evaluate and learn from past experiences and apply it to the present. So if you have ADHD, you have a disorder of executive functions. Can you have executive
Yes.
functioning challenges and not have ADHD? Absolutely. But, we're seeing skyrocketing diagnoses. Have we underdiagnosed for too long? Absolutely we have, especially in the
Right.
female population. But now we also
Okay.
know that screens cause temporary ADHD symptoms. Screens are not going to cause ADHD. They're not going to make you neurodiverse, but they are going to cause significant issues in your executive functioning development.
I love that. And for those people who are listening, go back an episode or two and listen to my interview with Wilderness Youth Project, because they talk a lot about the impact of screens and how to help get your child off screens and interacting with nature. So it's a good companion to this. It speaks to me too, because look, as a child, still as an adult, I have ADHD, certainly, formed at this point now, routines and processes to get things done. But as a parent, because, back in the dinosaur days, this just wasn't something that was recognized or talked about or diagnosed. But as a parent, how do I identify, is this something my child might be struggling with, right? Versus just being a kid, an adolescent who's going through puberty. And then if I do think that there's an issue, what do I do?
Yeah, so the first thing you want to do is you want to speak to the doctor who knows you personally. You want to stay off of social media and stay off of the parent Facebook groups where it's going to be nothing but negativity and horror stories and parents telling their kid's story like it's representative of everybody. So stay off of social media, talk to licensed physicians, talk to doctors, and get a full evaluation. And make sure it's not an evaluation that's done over a couple of hours on a weekend. Make sure it's an evaluation that involves informal observation. Your child needs to be observed socially, in the home, at school. For decades, we thought ADHD was external, behavioral-based, academic-based disorder. You have ADHD, it's going to affect you at school. You have executive functioning, those are skills needed for school. When in reality, we now know school is now not even the place where the primary symptoms of ADHD are seen. The primary ADHD symptoms are actually seen in the home towards parents.
Okay.
So the ADHD brain responds best to structure, accountability,
Right.
rules, and conditional relationships, which is school. So, and a lot of them go to school and do fairly well and fly under the radar, those kinds of things.
Right.
But it's at home where there's no structure and there's unconditional relationships where the biggest behaviors are seen. So a lot of parents will call their kids teachers and describe their kids at home, and the teachers are like, are we talking about the same kid here?
Yeah,
Like
this
your
is
kid
completely different. No,
completely separate.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think for a long time that was kind of dismissed as, well, children feel comfortable at home and so they get to relax a little bit. But what you're saying is that's actually where you can start flagging, oh, this is something we might need to look into more.
Yeah, and that's some of the
Okay.
social media pseudoscience that's spreading is this
Yes.
whole concept of masking, saying that that oh, your kid goes to school all day and they're masking, so they're holding in all of their behaviors. So when they get
Right.
home, you're their safe person. You have to let them let loose. So give them the screens, let them curse, let them yell, let them. I've even seen some people say, you have to be their punching bag and let them physically attack you. It's not. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, first of all, this concept of masking was created to make parents feel better about the differences in behaviors between school and home. But in
Hmm.
reality, it's just the ADHD brain or the child brain responding best to structure, condition, and relationships than the unstructured and the unconditional, especially the ADHD brain. The ADHD brain is very black and white and rigid. So
Okay.
the concept of unconditional love is very hard for them to grasp. To them, it's basically, here's this adult in my life, here's this person in my life that I could say absolutely unspeakable things to, and I can say no to everything she asks me to do, and
Exactly.
I could just ignore her all the time and treat her so horribly, and she's still going to tuck me in at night and buy me my favorite snacks and give me the
Yeah.
Wi-Fi password. That this is what throws off 50-50 social reciprocity, and
Got
we
it.
end up seeing, moms really get the worst of ADHD behaviors.
Academic performance and test scores have become increasingly important in today's admissions landscape. That's why Admittedly is partnered with Advantage Testing, the nation's #1 private tutoring company. For nearly 40 years, their Ivy League tutors have helped students perform their very best. Help your student get an advantage and learn more at admittedly.co/testing. That's admittedly.co/testing.
And so from a layman's perspective, so I'm hearing you say, okay, the structure in primary school and high school is really good because it is regimented, it's strict, it's scheduled. They come home, you work with parents to kind of hold and maintain boundaries and schedules at home. But then what happens when you go to college? You don't need to go to class. You don't have your mom or dad there holding those boundaries. How do you, and that's that's a rite of passage, right? But how do you help these children make that transition successfully, to your point that we have the highest first semester dropout rate, which I'm
And
imagining probably plays into that, right?
yeah, and that right there is the $1 million question. That's exactly it. And this is, there's never been a harder time to be a parent. There's never been a harder time to be youth. We have a parent burnout crisis, and we have a
Yes.
fully documented youth mental health crisis. So when it comes to executive functions, there's a reason why executive functions don't make their way into schools, because American schools are obsessed with testing, 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 testing. And you
Yes.
can't measure executive functions the same way you can measure other skills, because executive functioning is a fancy term for your imagination. There's a reason why when you go and get your kid diagnosed with ADHD, it's a bunch of informal checklists. It's not the kids taking tests themselves, because executive functioning is your ability to visualize using your nonverbal working
Right.
memory, talk to yourself using your verbal working memory, and then be able to regulate, motivate, and have a deeper stop, think, process, and then do internal set of system and internal system of checks and balances. So, overall, when we look at overall executive functioning levels, we have to measure it of prompt dependence versus independence. So when you have
Okay.
ADHD and executive dysfunction, you need someone else in your life to be your prefrontal cortex, to be your executive function. And if you're a parent listening to this podcast, chances are you are the executive functioning system for your kids and probably your
Yes.
entire family. And that's what's leading to so much burnout and exhaustion. So parents need to look at, what am I doing for my child that they are capable of doing themselves? Where am I over accommodating? Where am I
Right.
lowering the bar? Where are they prompt dependent where they shouldn't be? Where are they not independent? And really, the foundation of this youth mental health crisis are we stole 3 things from childhood. We took it away from
Okay.
them as adults. We stole it. And this is what created this lack of executive functioning skills. Number 1, we stole
What? Yeah.
play. Play. unstructured,
Yes.
outdoor, unsupervised play. Sending your kids outside, saying, be outside, come home until dinner,
Come
and then
back at
playing
dinner.
outside.
Exactly.
Exactly. All that kind of stuff where that took a lot of problem
Mhm.
solving and no maps, no Google Maps, no GPS, no Life 360, going out and
Yeah.
playing.
No
We
phone
stole play.
calls, checking in
Yes.
all the time.
Yes, if you have a kid who's not playing outside every day, that's a very serious problem. Play, we stole boredom. Kids are not bored anymore.
Yes.
What do we do when we're bored? We learn to self-regulate. We learn to be with ourselves. We think about the day we just had. We think about what we're going to do later. We're building our hindsight and our foresight, which is crucial to ending that time blindness and instant gratification in the moment. And we also still struggle, and we now over-accommodate students.
Yes.
And we've seen 504 plans go from 10 pages to 100 pages. So we're creating a world where we are unintentionally promoting prompt dependency by giving them a world where they're never bored, where they never have to struggle, where they never have to deal with consequences. And they're not developing the executive functioning skills needed. And we're only focusing on things like GPA and testing and things like that, where honestly, if you don't have executive functioning skills, your GPA is meaningless.
There's no question. And I think the question that comes to my mind from this, being a parent, is this all sounds like things that we worked on when my children were young. What do you do now to these parents? They're both working, they're stressed, they're tired. They've got a teenager in their house. It's very hard to parent a teenager. They're on the cusp of adulthood. How do you now enforce these things with somebody who's big and strong and independent and getting ready to go off to college? It seems much more difficult.
So there are only two ways to strengthen executive functions, not through lectures, not through worksheets, not through monologues, not through heart-to-hearts. It is through varied experiences and interpersonal relationships. You need to do as many different things as possible and meet as many different things as possible. We can't succumb to big tech's perfect marketing scheme that all relationships are online. Minecraft,
Right.
Roblox, Fortnite, Snapchat, Discord are real social experiences, because they're not. All they do is
Okay.
make kids depressed and antisocial. So you need to start to think about, number one, is my child waking up, going to school, coming home, staying home? If they are, and
Got
90%
it.
of their childhood is the walls of the school, the walls of the home, that's a problem. They're not having varied
Okay.
experiences. Just like Jonathan Haidt talked about in The Anxious Generation, screens are experience killers. Once a phone
Yes.
comes into a child's life, that's all they care about. I talk to parents every single day, and they'll say, like, how do I get my child to do the task? How do I get him to do his homework? How do I get him to do this? How do I get him to do that? And my follow-up question is always, well, what is he doing instead of the task? Oh, he's on his phone. Oh, he's on video games. Oh, he's on
Right.
YouTube. Of course. And so we have to remember, kids today, their brains are hardwired towards instant gratification. The skill of delayed gratification is gone because of the world we've given them. They need to develop that skill like a muscle.
No more
So when they're
marshmallows.
So exactly. So when their brains are hardwired towards instant gratification, they're constantly seeking two things: screens
Okay.
and conflict. Screens and conflict. If screens are not available to me, I'm going to go start a fight with mom and dad. I'm going to go start an argument. I'm going to go negotiate. I'm going to go complain. I'm going to go use negative self-talk, whatever it may be. So as long as screens and conflict are available to them, they're going to choose those two things 100 times out of 100 times over every other task. And as long as we do that, they are not going to develop executive function.
And so are the parents now set up in terms of, like, if you don't go out and do this thing, you can't have your phone? Like, are the parents now the gatekeepers? How do you structure something? Because I can feel parents saying, look, I barely have time to pick up dinner for the family on the way home. Everybody's working, everybody's stressed. So how does that look in practice? Or is this something that you work with families on over time to develop these things?
Yes, and that's exactly why we never take a one-size-fits-all approach with anything at GrowNOW.
Got it.
Everything is fully individualized executive functioning internal skills training and fully personalized parent coaching, because every single family is different. Families have different values, different resources, everything. So it has to be tailored towards those things. But basically, number one is your kid should not have a smartphone to begin with. There is enough evidence out there that
Fair
it
enough.
is absolutely detrimental to their brain. And right now, we live in a world where one of the greatest advantages you can give your child is not getting them a phone. It's as simple as that. Because this whole concept, every single parent now, they fell for big tech's marketing. They thought it was going to make them safe, smart, and social, and ready for a tech-filled world.
Yeah.
We now have a decade of research that shows it doesn't make them safe, smart, and social. It makes them depressed, dormant, dependent, and
Anxious.
antisocial. So, and anxious and everything, and completely just, brain rot is real. Digital dementia
I
is real.
am so glad that I didn't have to wrestle with him. High school was hard enough, honestly, and we had none of this. So I had to type. I went to high school with a typewriter, if you can believe that. And it was
Wow,
cutting
look at
edge because
that.
it
All
had
right.
one of those little like dot matrix things that you could type a short sentence on before it printed. And I thought I was the bee's knees, I'll tell you what. So as we're thinking about sending children off to college, what are some, like, how do you prioritize things like managing time, starting tasks, regulating sleep and stress, staying organized? Like, is there a preference order that you work with students on that? Like, is there a hierarchy, a matrix?
Yeah, all of those skills need to be developed before they ever step foot on the college campus. They have to be doing those things. Too many parents are sending kids off to college on a wing and a prayer that all of a sudden it's just going to happen as soon as they show up. Parents have to recognize parents are so burnt out and so exhausted that they just parent to get to the end of the day because everything is so hard that they
Right.
don't have time to look into the future and say, can my child be successful without me? But guess what? You're not going to college with them. And if mom and dad are not there in the dorm room with you, who's there to say, put your phone away, get your work done, get to sleep on
Right.
time, eat well, exercise, check your school email, set office hours, go to the library and get your work done, make sure you get to class. You're not there to constantly prompt them. So, parents are so focused on grades, 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 building up that resume, building up that GPA. But the biggest question is, what can my child do without me? Like, you got to start thinking about that more more instantly
Right.
overall of, can my child be successful if I'm not in the same room as them? So many parents
Yeah.
now are not only just the parent, they're also the homework secretary, where they think that every
Yes.
single time the kid comes home from school, I have to sit down next to them, watch them open their Google Classroom, show me what's
Go
due,
through
show
the
me you submitted it.
assignments. Exactly.
Yeah, make sure they're not sneaking YouTube time, and make sure they don't have 75 different tabs open at once. Well, guess what? You're not going to be able to do that at college. So you better, we need to figure something out before they ever step foot there, because there's far too many parents these days sending their kids to college. They have the grades to get in, they have the SAT scores to get in, but they don't have the executive functions to be successful once there. So they're taking out a lot of student loans, paying a lot of money just for the kid to be unsuccessful because it's sink or swim on day one.
Right. And unhappy, right? And as parents, you want your child to go and thrive and have a great experience. And if you're not setting them up for success, then what are we doing?
That's exactly it. And yeah, it's quite scary. And we have to remember there's never a greater jump in life between senior year of high school and first semester of college, the jump in executive functioning skills needed. Those skills need to be there. And if you're a parent that already has your kid with so many screens, they have a phone, they're obsessed with screens, it's all Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft, Snapchat, everything. You need to do something about that now. You cannot send a screen addicted kid to college. If you do, all of the work you did, all of the money you put towards tutoring and advocates and this and that, it's all going to be wasted
Is for
because
naught.
you can't do that.
Yeah.
And if you were sold this gift that, oh, your kid needs to learn skills to balance the screens and, they can keep the tech in their life, they need skills to balance. That's not going to happen. That's all big tech pushing that because they realized they're
Right.
going to make most of their money on kids because they're the ones that can't manage it. So having
Big tobacco, big tech. Exactly.
Yes.
Big Mac.
Having a laptop at school and having a phone as a kid and a teenager does not prepare them for a tech-filled world. Being
For sure.
bored, not having technology, playing, having relationships, learning self-restraint, learning self-regulation needs to happen before you have a phone. And a lot of that does not happen before 18 years old. So we need to start having a cardinal rule in this country where your kid can't have a phone until they can buy it themselves.
And I think we're seeing that in Europe is starting to regulate a lot more. And we're seeing it in a lot of high schools now, especially the boarding schools. They have very controlled windows when the students are allowed to use their phones. And they're very, very diligent about that.
And it's working.
And the initial data are that it is working. So it also gets to something that, curious your take on this. We talk about socialization and responsibilities. One of the things that I advocate for, and we hear this a lot from missions officers, is over the summer, get a job. Not a fancy job at your mom's friend's hedge fund, but instead go work at McDonald's, go work at Applebee's, go take a really lousy service job and learn how to show up and not have your parents be able to interfere and report to a manager and get barked at by unhappy customers and build that resilience.
100%. Because you know what a job is? A varied experiences.
Yes.
It's a varied experience outside of the home, away from the parents. Parents need to start to recognize the second your child walks past that doormat and enters your home, you can subtract around 5-6 years from their age. So the more time your child spends within the walls of the home, where all like the deep dark secrets, if these walls could talk, of the house, of what this house sees, the more time your child spends outside of the house, the greater their executive functioning skills will be. You know, the further every foot the child gets away from mom and dad, the greater their executive functions are. This is what tends to happen. Obviously, nothing is one size fits all. But when they're kids, it's not, hey, can you please sign up for a club, sport, activity after school? No, it's you pick one, you have to do it. I'm making sure you're not getting
with it. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm making sure you're not getting on the bus. I'm not picking you up when school ends. You need to be outside of the house. This whole waking up, going to school, coming home, staying home is killing their executive functions because that's a lack of experiences and relationships. So they should be doing clubs, sports, activities. We're not asking them to do hard labor or anything, crazy things. It's fun. It's games. It's having an identity outside of being a child, a family member, and being a student. The whole concept of having a third place in life. Kids don't have a third place anymore. They just have, I'm a student, I'm a son, I'm a student, I'm a daughter, and that's it.
Yep.
They have to have an extra place. So as clubs, sports, activities, YMCA, gym, literally anything. They can join a walking club. They can do anything. You can just send them outside and play. But once they're old enough to get a job, they should absolutely be getting a job.
And, I love that because it's something I talk about a lot too, is that it does, like, you're not being judged on what you do. You're being judged on how you do it. And so in the admissions process, at least. So it's like, get out there, do things, engage. It doesn't, like you said, walking club, bird watching, volunteering, working, whatever it looks like, just go out there and engage. And I think universities are really kind of focusing and looking at fragility and ability to thrive once you do get into the community, because they don't want you to fail. They're unhappy if you get there and fail. That's not their goal.
Exactly. And what you just said, just go out there and do it. That's performance. That's executing. Yes. That's executive functions. So parents are like, executive functioning is this big catchy term now. And parents are like, why can't they just execute? Why can't they just do it? Because we're not giving them the opportunities to do it. Every day you're asking your child, every single day you're giving your child a fork in the road. Be on your phone or do something that actually helps you. They're going to choose their phone every single time. So if you give them an option, they're going to choose the path of least resistance. That's the executive dysfunction brain, is take the path of least resistance. We have to make sure we keep the bar high.
This show is brought to you by Early Edge Plus, Admittedly's flagship coaching program for high-achieving students and their families. At Admittedly, we've built a team of former admissions officers from top schools like Wharton, Duke, Stanford, Yale, Harvard, and University of Chicago. We know what actually gets students into top colleges because we've been in the room making those decisions. If you want that insider perspective, visit admittedly.co/apply. That's admittedly.co/apply to book your free family action call with one of our admissions advisors today.
And Mike, let me ask you a question because it's been in the news, and so we're going to get a lot of questions on this. Can you talk about this whole article that blew up coming out of Stanford with, we all know families game this system. And to me, the tragedy is it detracts from the students who actually do need the support and do need the help. What's your take on this?
In terms of parents seeking out diagnoses?
Yeah, I don't know if you read the article, but it was written by a Stanford student who was basically like, look, everybody has accommodations. We use it to game the housing system. We use it to game the food system. And in fact, if you don't press for this, and there's definitely a privilege bias here and everything else, if you aren't getting some kind of diagnosis and extra time, you're at a significant disadvantage. And I've heard that over and over from our families as well. Like, my child is at a disadvantage because everybody in their class has double time.
Yeah, 100%. And this is a system that is going to burst and a system that is absolutely going to break because it is unsustainable and not working. And
Okay.
we're further pathologizing kids, and we are setting them up for failure because these accommodations and these extra time on tests are just making them unemployable. So just like we said earlier, where I love everything you're doing because it focuses on the future and it causes parents to future thinking towards college. How about beyond college? How about what they're going to do once they have that piece of paper? Because let's be honest, there's a
Yeah.
lot of kids that have a college degree and are still unemployed because they're unemployable. So do they like workplaces are not going to pay you to have all of these accommodations. So
Right.
if you can't work as a team, if you can't get things done on time, accommodations have to be realistic. We've gotten into the
Yes.
mindset where like a lot of parents can, really push evaluators to make sure you get certain diagnoses on an
Exactly.
evaluation.
Yeah.
You can hire an advocate to go after a 504 IEP of my kid can turn things in late with no points off. That's not going to fly at college. That's not going to
No.
fly in the workplace. The two best accommodations for kids with ADHD are being able to sit in the front of the class to minimize distractions and being able to take your tests in a separate quiet room. Because most colleges can do that and most workplaces can do that. You're
Right.
allowed to request a quiet
Exactly.
room and preferential seating. But the ability to turn things in late with no points off, having people read questions aloud to you, you get a special laptop, you get this and that. If it's not realistic for long term, what are we doing? We're
Right.
further pathologizing them, and we're making things as easy as possible for them and taking away their ability to learn resiliency and grit. When we treat them as fragile, they become fragile.
Okay, so and I love all this. So let's get to the brass tacks, right? If I am the parent of a high schooler right now, trying to prepare them for college, what are 2, 3 things that I should absolutely be doing? And then how do I know if what I'm doing is actually helping, that something has shifted in my child?
So number one, you have to look at, the very basic info. What is my child doing on a day-to-day basis? Are they waking up, going to school, coming home, staying home? What is their overall screen usage? Are they involved in their community? Do they have an identity outside of school and a home? So number one is, how are we going to develop their third place? How are
Right.
we going to make sure that they're in clubs, sports, activities, getting involved, building interest, and building real world talents? Because there's far too many kids that from birth to 18 have a lot more virtual world skills, which are meaningless and useless, than real
Yeah,
world skills. So,
exactly. But
this
it's
whole
the age of AI, Mike. If you're not
yeah, oh
in
yeah,
AI,
totally.
nothing else works.
Good
Yeah.
luck with that. Good luck with that,
Yeah,
guys.
exactly.
Like if there's one thing that AI cannot replace, it's people skills and communication skills and the ability to work
Exactly.
in a team. And those are the skills of the future. If you have a
Yes.
child who turns 18, 19, 20, 21 years old and they can persevere through a hard task, work as a team, look you in the eye, have a conversation, be flexible, be kind, be resilient, that's going to make you instantly employable. If you are someone who
Yes.
needs to check your phone every 5 minutes, can barely persevere through a task, constantly asks a million questions, needs a lot of help, employers don't want to hire someone that needs their hand held every 5 seconds. And that's what
Exactly.
parents need to think about is how often does my child need their hands held? So, getting them involved, getting them out of the house, get them out of the house, get them playing when they're young kids, elementary and middle school kids,
Yep.
need to be playing outside every single day. The outside world has never been safer for kids because all the dangerous people
Yeah.
are now online. They're all on
Yeah.
Fortnite, Roblox, and Minecraft. So
Exactly.
the outside world has never been safer to send your kids playing outside unsupervised. The more outdoor play you do, the more prepared you are for life, period. Play is the work of childhood. Play is the greatest form of research. That's never going to stop. So you need to get to know your neighbors, get to know the parents in your kids' class. We used to know our neighbors, we used to know our people, we used to communicate with people before adults became screen addicted. So send your kids out with people, have them doing homework with each other, have them doing homework at the library, have them doing homework at school, stop being the homework secretary and get them out of the house. And not only does
Exactly.
that help the kid, but it helps you as the parent get your life back. Think about our parents. Think about our parents. They used to go to work all day, be
Yes,
exhausted, and they would
exactly.
come home and they would have the house to themselves for a few hours because we were outside. Now kids are just always home, like an annoying little roommate, like always there. And how do
Always.
you not become a
And you're
helicopter
you're
parent?
their Uber driver, chef,
Everything.
Exactly. And just
Everything.
to clarify, when you say play is important, you are not talking about overstructured, parent-dominated
My parent,
sports
no.
leagues at all. You're like, go
One,
explore, be creative, stretch your mind and your legs at the same
there's
time.
a reason why when you
Love it.
open Instagram and you have parenting influencers yelling at you that no one is constantly pushing outdoor, unstructured, nature-based play, because nobody makes money when kids play outside. Nobody
Yeah.
profits off of it. It's just kids
Yep.
playing. And that is always going to be the best thing. So like, let's say you have student A that gets, B's, C's, and D's, but plays outside every day and has a million friends. And then you have student B that has a 4.0 GPA, comes home, gets their homework done, and then earns their screens, and then on screen until bedtime, and all of their relationships are screen-based. Give me student A 100% of the time.
I know. And the tension though here, so because I'm gonna get some heat for this. The tension is that if you're aiming for Ivy Plus schools, they're looking at that GPA, they're looking at that test score. And so a lot of this inherent tension is, how do I have the child that gets good grades, but is independent either through working or play or whatever it is? And obviously this is a longer term setup that you're advocating for, which I love. But there is that tension, right? You're not going to Yale if you have those B's and C's, but you're really good with other people. And not that Yale is the path that you have to take, but it is something that we do hear from parents. And any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so if you have that lofty goal of sending your kid to an Ivy League school, then you
Mhm.
definitely better not get them a smartphone. Then you definitely better not get them an Xbox, PlayStation, and
Right.
Switch, because that's going to greatly hurt their chances. So if we're talking Ivy League school, we're talking executive functions plus incredibly high IQ. And a lot of kids with ADHD do have an above average gifted IQ. IQ is something you're typically, born with
Yes.
and, needs to be developed over time and things like that. So it's a very small selection of kids. I totally understand a lot of parents want their kids to be professional athletes or Ivy League and things like that. But, you have to look beyond the constant structure, tutoring, because these admissions offices do also look at how involved are you in clubs,
They
sports,
do.
activities. Do you get a job? Do you get those things? And they're probably also going to want to interview the child before accepting their application, like a lot of Ivy League schools do.
Yep.
Want to talk to the kid first. And
Yep.
they're going to know. They're going to be able to tell right away, is this an iPad kid? Is this a kid who spends a lot of time on his phone?
Exactly.
Or is this a kid that goes outside a lot and has actual real face-to-face friends?
Well, and if you look at two of admissions officers' darling favorite schools, one is a Thatcher school in Ojai, California, where as a freshman you're assigned a horse, and one of their mottos is that the outside of a horse is good for the inside of a person, and
Oof,
you
love it.
have to. It's amazing. You go there, and there are these. So for parents of freshmen, I want you to imagine this: 7 a.m. rain, snow, shine, doesn't matter. Those freshmen are all out there cleaning the stalls, changing the shavings, watering, feeding their horse, grooming their horse before they go to breakfast. They're all sleepy-eyed. They're all wearing wellies. But you know what? I've walked out through the barns and they're all like, "Good morning. How are you? Nice to see you." It is amazing the focus that is there, and the responsibility. I think is one of the most unique and incredible programs. And then my favorite, it's not really a college, it's a 2-year college, but Deep Springs in the high desert of California. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's
Yeah, of course.
basically, working cattle ranch. And they're like, and it's academically super rigorous, but you know what? You're running a full business with live animals depending on you. And the Ivies snap those kids up after their 2 years. They're fighting over them because they know how to handle life.
There you have it. You just summed it up. And that what you just described is most likely the future of education if we do things correctly. And now with screens are becoming a lot more of a class divide where some of the lower income families that have to work double, triple jobs end up needing a lot of technology to babysit the kids. Obviously, it's
Yes.
those kinds of things. And the very, very wealthy people, the people who design the tech to begin with, don't give them to their own kids.
No,
And
their
send
kids are all in Waldorf
correct
in Silicon
correct.
Valley. Exactly.
So what do they know that we don't?
What does that tell you?
Exactly. So there you have it. But everything you just described, that hands-on project-based learning, that's exactly it. That experience right there of having to deal with the horses before going to breakfast, that experience right there is more important than anything they will ever learn through a lecture listen model.
Couldn't agree more. Mike, I could talk to you for hours, and I really
Yeah.
appreciate your time. I think what I would love to do is invite you to do an Admittedly Academy for our Admittedly families. I think there's a lot that they could learn from you. We'd love to have you on. We'd talk about that afterwards. We're going to link, for our listeners, we're going to link everything that Mike spoke about, GrowNOW ADHD, his books, his ADHD parenting podcast in the show notes. If this resonates with you, please take advantage of it. As you can see, Mike is shy and retiring and is not passionate at all about this. So I think, you're just an incredible resource, and I really appreciate what you're doing for these children, the families. I think, if you have any concern about how to build these real skills, whether it's early or whether you feel it's late and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm sending my child to college this, next year or in a year or two, reach out, benefit from his wisdom. I think it's wonderful what you're doing. For everybody here, thank you so much for following the podcast. If you're seeing this on YouTube, please hit subscribe. We really appreciate it. If you are following on the podcast on Apple or Spotify, please follow. It means a lot to us. And for more on admissions, more on ADHD, please follow us on Instagram and TikTok at AdmittedlyCo. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you. We'll see you in the next episode. Mike, you are a gentleman and a scholar, and really appreciate you stopping by today. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us today. Please take a moment to subscribe to the Admittedly podcast and download this episode. I welcome you to share your thoughts and questions with me. You can find us on social media at Admittedly Podcast. I look forward to continuing our journey